Hey guys, welcome back to Wheel Part Garage. Today I'm going to show you how to replace your rear wheel bearing on a 2011 Lincoln MKX. Stay tuned. So this is a pretty straightforward repair. The only added thing we have to do this is we have to remove all the braking components so we can get to the wheel hub. The rear bearing is integrated into the hub. You buy it as one assembly. It's held on with a few bolts from the rear. So first things first, we're going to remove the caliper bracket, and then the rear rotor. That way we have everything out of the way. We can then get to the bolts in the rear to remove the hub. All right. Since the caliper on the MKX has the integrated emergency brake, can't do the normal trick I usually use, which is to put a pry bar in here to pry the piston in to make this a little easier to get off. This requires some sort of tool to turn the piston in to retract the caliper. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the two mounting bolts. These are 13 millimeters. Fortunately, it's got this vibration damper on the back. So in order to remove that one, you need to use a 13 millimeter wrench. But that comes off the same way, just with a little extra on the end. Now we can remove our caliper. And then we'll put the caliper out of the way, making sure we're not hanging any weight on the brake hose. I'm going to just take the pads off just so I don't have to worry about those falling off, because I will reuse these. Now the caliper retaining bracket is 15 millimeter. 2 bolts on the back side here. All right, then normally there is a bolt here that holds the rotor to the hub. This one is missing. Also, because this car is from the Northeast, I got a decent amount of rust holding everything together. So what I usually do is take a nice dead blow hammer, and I'll usually hit the face of the rotor. But in this case, I want to reuse this rotor. So I'm going to give it a couple of good whacks on the hub. There we go. Here's my rotor. And now finally I can see my hub. Okay, I know it's going to be a little hard to see, but there are 4 bolts that hold the hub to the spindle assembly. Those bolts are accessed from behind here. This wire here is your ABS sensor. You shouldn't have to remove this to get the hub out. We will have to remove the axle nut from the hub and then gently tap the axle so it's free from this before we pull this off of the knuckles. So then we grab the socket for these bolts. We'll start removing those. So guys, I moved the camera so you can get a better idea of the bolts I'm trying to get out. These are 15mm bolts, as you can see from behind the hub here. So we're going to take these 4 out from here. All right, now we can remove the axle nut, 32mm. And then we're going to drive the axle in with a punch here. All right, now comes the difficult part. Now we got to try to separate the hub from the spindle here. I say it's difficult because, as you can see here, a lot of this car is rusted. So this is most likely going to be pretty stuck to this. There is a special tool where it bolts to this, has a, sort of an extension that comes out, and then you hit that extension with a hammer to break things loose. So we're going to see how hard this goes just by sort of smacking it around to get it to come off. Okay guys, well, as you can see, I ended up having to remove the entire spindle. I just could not get this guy off. You could see the amount of rust on there. I heated it, I soaked it, I beat it, I used the air chisel. Nothing worked. So the reason why I'm showing you this is, what I did was I removed the entire assembly from all the control arms. And then from behind, very carefully, because I didn't want to try to risking removal of my ABS sensor, because this is probably also rusted in here, I disconnected it from the connector, which is located right there above the rear axle. And then I just sort of held this up on both sides, 2 blocks of wood. Then took my lump hammer and I smacked the bearing through the center here until it came loose. After I did that, I took my little die grinder just to clean up a lot of the rust buildup here so that my new hub assembly will fit right in here nice and easy. I am going to put anti-seize in here just so I don't have to worry about rusting again in case I do have to replace it in the near future. I also right away went and straightened out the backing plate as best I can. So at this point now, since I have it all off, I'm going to put my hub assembly in here, and I'm going to torque the 4 bolts with it off, and those 4 bolts are going to get torqued to 55 Newton meters or 41 foot-pounds. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to lather this guy up with a little bit of anti-seize. I hope I don't have to take it out again, but just in case. So you can see from the pattern here, it's not exactly uniform. Get some of the rust off of here. Make sure my surfaces are clean. And this guy will drop right in here. It should still have a snug fit. Okay, now from behind, I can get my bolts run in. Oh, it's getting messy here. Just gonna use my gun to run these down. And then, like I said, these are gonna get torqued down to 41 foot-pounds. And I'm going to tighten these in a crisscross pattern just to make sure everything seats down nicely. All right, so there's my new hub bearing installed on my knuckle. Okay guys, unfortunately this part of the video I lost all the audio, but it is important information and I want to at least give you an idea of what I'm doing here. So as you can see on the coil spring there, I've got a threaded rod that's basically a coil spring compressor, and I did that so that I can hold the spring in place without it pulling the control arm down to the ground. You already know I disconnected the axle shaft. From there was just a few bolts. There's the lower control arm and then the rear shock. Then there's also this other sort of trailing arm and upper control arm that hold this all into place. It's all very simple. The main thing you have to be aware of when you're putting this back in is you need to install the axle first. And as you saw from the beginning of the video, it was a little bit hard to get the axle out just because it is a very tight tolerance fit. But once you get this thing into place and the axle in, everything should go back in the way you removed it. I've got my spindle, knuckle all back together. All the bolts are tight. Even got my ABS wire back connected all the way where it goes to the connector in the back. I'm now ready to put my brakes back on. I do like to put a little anti-seize on the hub here, and that's to keep the rotor and the wheel from sticking really bad. Rotor's installed. This is when you would put your retaining bolt back. Mine's missing. Since I'm reusing the brakes, I'm going to clean this up, get a little bit of that rust out before I put this back on. Install my caliper bracket. Okay, I can reinstall my pads. Okay, the regular bolt goes in on top and the vibration damper on the bottom. Okay, at this point, now that I have everything sort of on, I'm going to do my torque for the wheel bearing to the spindle. Those 4 bolts get torqued down to 98 foot-pounds. And then on the axle nut, this guy gets torqued down to quite a bit. This guy's going to get torqued down to 203 foot-pounds. Now, the easiest way to do this is once I have the wheel on the ground, using the brakes to hold this from moving and tightening this down. So I'm going to use my impact gun just to drive this down, and then I'm going to get somebody to sit in the car with the brakes so we can torque this to its final torque. All right, guys, last step, we're going to torque that axle nut 203 foot-pounds. Now, that is a lot of weight. That's it. Put my center cap back on. And this job is done. All right, guys, I hope you liked today's video. As you can see, it's relatively easy to replace your wheel hub bearing on your 2011 Lincoln MKX. For me though, living in the Northeast, I mean, anyone in the snow belt, you're probably going to run into issues like I did where that hub is frozen into the spindle itself. Like I said, there are a few tools where it bolts to the hub and you can hit it with a hammer to break it loose. Or you could do like I did, remove the entire thing and hit it from behind to get it out. Might also be able to remove the axle from the inboard side to get the axle out of the way and then hit it out. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it a little more closely. That could be another way to do it. But yeah, that's basically it. I'll leave in the description below a list of the torque specifications needed to replace this. I'll even try to put in some of the ones for the spindle hardware that I had to remove. But that's it for today's video. Again, guys, thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.